Good evening, Conversation 1. The date today is April 6th, and this will be uploaded tonight so that it's available for you on April 7th, Tuesday, April 7th. This is week 5 of our online course lecture series. We are 1 week ahead of some other classes because we've already had one makeup class. So although it says week 4 content, don't be confused because my Conversation 3 class is still on week 4, but we are on week 5. Today we're going to talk about chapter 4 in the textbook, takeaway 2, and the topic is about endangered species, about wild animals. Some people like animals and some people do not. I've loved animals since I was a little boy. I had this really amazing encyclopedia when I was young. It had a Korean tiger, basically a Siberian tiger, as the entire hardcover of it, and I read that book inside and out until it fell apart. Lots of people who like dinosaurs do the same thing. I do have a few books about animals and dinosaurs behind me. This one in particular, this is a the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Dinosaurs. It's a fantastic book. I love looking at these things. Some people like pets, some people like wild animals, some people don't like animals. Some people like to eat animals, some people don't. Some people think it's wrong to eat animals. One of the most famous activist groups is called PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I'm not going to get into what they do, although they are very political and they sometimes do very extreme things, which I do not agree with. But I do think that we need to show animals respect, and we need to understand that animals have feelings and emotions. There's been lots of scientific work done to prove that animals feel pain, and certain animals who are very intelligent have complicated brains. Obviously the closest to us is chimpanzees and some other mammals. Dolphins are very intelligent, and they have, when we do things or when they have problems, they experience things, they suffer just like we do. So that's kind of what this is about. We're going to talk about animals. I kind of like to work in the environmentalism, the environment, because I am sort of an environmentalist. I try to be anyway. All of us sometimes forget or don't even understand how we can treat the planet better. I've had lots of conversations with people, and just protesting or just claiming that you're doing something better because you have an electric car doesn't always translate into a better environment for everyone. I do think that it's important for us to protect the wild. My favorite thing to do in my vacation is to go camping. And the type of camping I like to do is backcountry camping, so it's remote and there's no people around and more animals, and less people is the best situation, my favorite situation. When we do those kind of things, if everybody does them, then the whole environment gets damaged. So you have to be, I guess you have to show respect for nature, and you can't disregard the impact that you have. Since I'm Canadian, every time I go to a Korean national park, it surprises me just about how many people are there. And of course there's not very many animals in a Korean national park, because when you have 1,000 or tens, I've been to some famous ones, Sodak-san is one of the famous national parks, and there's basically 1,000 car traffic jam to get into the national park every day. And when you finally get in there, it's just teeming with people. So you climb the mountain in a line, and there are just tens of thousands of people all over that. And human beings, just like if there was tens of thousands of cows or tens of thousands of any animal, they do damage to the environment because there's too many of us. So part of the thing about understanding about the animals and what happens to the animals is usually what happens to the animals and the disappearing animals happens first, and then because they can't handle the damage to the environment, so they disappear, they go extinct, and then we move in, and then the damage gets worse, and then we realize later what the consequences, why those animals disappeared, because that area had been changed and damaged to the point where it couldn't regenerate. So I always show this video, and I can't show you it because I don't have a projector and stuff. I'm trying to work with some of these things. I'm probably not going to have a projector for you, but maybe if we extend this to the end of the semester, I'm going to add more and more stuff because, hey, if this is our class and this is our classroom, these books lined up don't help that much. So the whiteboard is on its way. I promise that. Will I have a projector or will I have a screen behind me? Maybe. I just listened to somebody explain to me what I didn't read it myself, so don't get me wrong. My Korean's not good enough to really follow the Korean news closely, but apparently the Korean government, the Minister of Health, and the experts here are concerned that people don't realize that a second outbreak that results from new clusters of the virus could trigger something like what happened in New York, right? That's an example for the rest of the world to be more careful about the potential for it just to spread all over the place. New York City, we should all be thinking of them and praying for them because now it is the worst situation in the world. Italy also, but New York City, in terms of just the sheer number of cases, is the worst. So I'll see what I can do because I'm not making predictions, as I said, really. I'm just saying we should not be surprised if the whole semester becomes an online. This just keeps going indefinitely. The Minister of Health in Korea basically said we might be doing this for the whole year, until 2021, like 2020 into next summer. Okay, so don't be surprised. We'll do what we can. I'm trying to add things as we go. So the video that I would normally show you in the classroom on the projector, I'm going to share it on the website. It's a really interesting case study of how animals that you think would never have a positive impact for humans or for the environment can have a trickle-down effect. So I'll link this and you can watch this video. Basically what the hypothesis is, the experiment was to reintroduce wolves. It's Yosemite Park, I believe, in the United States. That's in the western United States. It's a very famous national park. And the wolves had been hunted or chased away or removed from the park for obvious reasons, because wolves can attack people and they do kill other animals. But it turns out that the wolves had an effect in the food chain that altered the behavior of every other animal beneath them. They're an alpha predator, so they hunt things that hunt other things all the way down to the bottom of the food chain. So they tried to reintroduce the wolves, and the wolves, of course, started hunting certain animals, like deer especially, and rabbits and beavers and other things. And it wasn't just the killing of the animals that was important. It was that the deer, even if they weren't getting eaten by the wolf, they were aware of the presence of the wolf, so they ate, grass, trees, shrubs, leaves, twigs in certain areas that were, a little bit safer. and they wouldn't walk around in the open because they were concerned about the presence of the wolf. So they stopped. They only went out to drink the water at the river, went quickly and took a drink of water, and then disappear back into the forest. So this allowed some of the plants to regrow, instead of getting eaten by the deer when they were small, these plants, because of the protection of the wolves, essentially, they grow into big trees instead of just being eaten when they're small. Trees hold the soil, so they started changing the path of the river. And when the river path changed, it started winding more in the erosion. Erosion means the soil falling into the water. When that happened, the path of the river started to change. And it created pools for fish to spawn in, and beavers to build dams, and bears started coming back because there was more plants growing that they liked to, berries and all that kind of stuff. And then the bears started eating deer too, and hunting other animals. And the whole system became more complex just because the wolves were necessary to make the whole ecosystem work. It's an amazing observation. I'm not going to say it's a scientific fact, but the indications are that the wolf is a very integral part of a food chain, which human beings, since we could be on the menu for a wolf, we have lots of folk tales and stories about the big bad wolf and other things. It's always a dangerous thing, especially for a human who's not an adult, like a child. Just like in Korean culture, the tiger is always the one, but the tiger and the wolf and those other predators that hunt humans, they have an effect on the entire ecosystem, and they change the behavior, not just in the fact that they eliminate too many of the animals, but they just make those animals behave better. One of the things about wolves that everybody knows pretty well is that they also go after the weaker ones. So there's a very common word in English, which you may not know, called culling. And to cull a group of people is to remove the weaker ones. And the effect of culling is essentially to make the group as a whole stronger, because the strongest ones survive and the weaker ones get picked off. And then you end up with a stronger group, and then they reproduce and they're stronger too. And the weaker ones that are not able to survive, they disappear. If you don't cull, if you have a population of deer, for example, and they don't have a natural predator, then they just multiply and multiply. And whether they're weak or strong, they continue to multiply. And this results in a dilution of the strength of the gene pool. That's the famous thing about wolves, but it's more than that. This video is more than that. It's not just about making stronger deer and faster, smarter deer. It's about making the beer. I guess that's what's on my mind. Sorry about that. The deer behave differently. If a deer drank beer, he would behave differently too, or she. Bad joke. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. The deer actually changed their behavior. They didn't just get, the weak ones don't just get killed. The smart ones, the deer in general, behave differently, and that has an effect on the actual physical environment of the park. So the Yosemite Park became healthier overall because the rivers themselves were affected by the wolves. It's a really cool story. So I will link that to the ESL Conversation website right under the link for this video. Now, in the book, there's a lot of adjectives and verbs. You need to be able to use a combination of vocabulary to be able to talk about an animal. You have a choice. This is going to be a really open-ended question like usual. So you can choose a particular animal that you think is interesting, weird, cool, it has a certain ability, and you need to be able to describe that. So you have to say things like, well, it can fly, or it can swim. Use the verbs that way. It can climb, it can jump, those kind of things. And you should use nouns like it has big ears. Adjectives, big, ears, noun. Combinations of adjectives and nouns will allow you to describe what the animal looks like. It has a tail or it doesn't, or it has flippers. You're talking about a whale or a dolphin. It has fins. All these words, some of them you may not even know, but that's the point of this class, is to learn new words. Now, are you going to, at some point in your life, need to talk about parts of animals? I have no idea. Maybe you'll become a veterinarian. Most of you are freshmen, so who knows? Broaden your vocabulary. I think learning about animals is fun anyway, just the basic names. If I was going to have a Korean test and I had the choice of subjects, I would say to the Korean, supervisor, the person who gave me the test, I'd say, listen man, my Korean's not very good. You can either ask me questions about food or animals, and I can handle it, right? What's an elephant? Kokiri. What's a giraffe? Kirin. What's a hippo? Hippopotamus. Hama. I know most of them, right? Whale, gore. Try me. I can handle it. But if you ask me to talk about ask me to talk about something else like politics or science or anything more difficult, then I'm lost. These words, you need to be able to at least talk about the animal of your choice. But claws and talons and, ears and spine, all these things about the attributes of the descriptions of the animals, some of them cross over to human beings and other things. They can be very useful. If you end up working in the food industry or anything else, maybe science, you're going to need, doctors need to know all these words as well for anatomy purposes. Koreans have been increasing the number of pets recently, so there's a Dongmul Byungwon, on every block now. Everybody's got a dog. So these words are useful, and to communicate them in English are helpful. The second thing I'm going to link for you, there's 2 links to go along with this lecture this week. Of course, I want you to read the content from the book as usual, but I'm not asking you to submit anything from that. I just want you to choose an animal and explain its effect. Don't use the wolf, because that's my example. You can use any other animal you want, and you can describe about the animal and why you think it's important to know about the animal. It can be, I'll give you one more example, and you may use this one if you want. The wolf one, please don't, because I've explained it too much, and the video also reinforces what I say. So wolf is not allowed. But something like the platypus, it's just an animal that, if you know what I'm talking about, maybe you don't know what a platypus is. It's kind of like it's an Australian animal, and it's part duck and part beaver and it's a marsupial technically, I believe. So it's like a cross between a koala and a duck and a beaver. That doesn't make sense probably, but it's really a mixed up animal. There's lots of jokes about platypi, multiple platypus, because the platypus is just, it looks like something that was a bit of a, God made snakes, but he had a ball and he just rolled them out and he's like, there's a snake. And then he made human beings, and human beings are all symmetrical, and we're some of us are good looking people, I think, proportionate and stuff, and then there's the platypus. It looks like he took a piece of 3 different animals and just glued them together, and you ended up with a platypus. So it doesn't really matter what animal you choose, but I want information about the animal, its effect on the environment, its history with human beings, how we interact with it, if it's an animal like a cow or a chicken, you can talk about, the fact that we grow them to eat them, and whether you think that we should behave differently. If you feel strongly about animal rights and you think that, people should be eating plant burgers that taste like beef instead of eating real cows, that's fine too. Just choose an animal and then run with it. describe the animal, and then tell me something interesting, how it relates, give me an idea. Talk about environmentalism, talk about endangered species, talk about ecosystems, talk about animal rights and morality. Just choose some sort of framework, some sort of perspective on the animal, and that's what I want you, after you describe what the animal looks like and what I should know, the basic details about the animal, then I want you to focus on some sort of ism, maybe, environmentalism or morality or something like that, so that you can give me a perspective on the animal. And like I said to you before, when you talk about something and you feel strongly about what you're talking about, then it's easier to remember, and it's easier to, convince somebody that you're serious and that you know what you're talking about, because you're focused and you have a purpose. So tell me why this animal is important, and tell me why you chose it, and do it with proper grammar and good vocabulary in half a page. Your answer, as usual, should be about 2 minutes long, and that's what I'm looking for. So again, the wolves changing the path of the rivers. That's the video I would like you to watch after you listen to me. And I'm going to put a link to the National Geographic page about endangered species. Of course, National Geographic is one of my all-time favorite channels and magazines. My brother had a subscription for, he may still, I don't even know, 20 years, 30 years since he was elementary school. So those National Geographic issues arrived at my house every month. And he got them first because it was his magazine. But as soon as he was done with it, I read them too, because they're National Geographic. It's one of my favorite institutions, one of my organizations, rather. I know you guys love National Geographic coats and having that label on the back. I don't know what's going on with that, but National Geographic is cool. I don't care about the what do Koreans call it, padding. I don't care about the long winter coat. I like the real thing, the National Geographic that teaches you about nature. Okay, so that's just my opinion. I would like one of those coats too, but it means something to me because I love National Geographic. Now they kind of put all animals into 7 categories. So an animal that there's a lot of animals, and it's basically got a huge population, for example, dogs or cats or cows or ducks. Those types of animals, those animal species are not endangered at all. So they just say those are least concern, like we're not worried about them. And that's basically level 0. That's the first case. And after that, you get near threatened. That means some of them are not. The population is starting to shrink, and they could become endangered. It's a warning. So that's level 1, I guess you could say. After that, they categorize them as vulnerable, which means that the population is declining. Then, after vulnerable, that's what are we at? Level 2. Level 3 is endangered, which is the word I've been using. That means 20%. There's a 20% chance that they're going to die, and there's 50% of the population is already gone. Then you have critically endangered, which means 90% of them are dead, and now it's getting really serious, and they have a chance to recover, but like the bald eagle, I'm not sure the number it got down to, maybe 1,000 or less bald eagles, like less than 1,000 mating pairs anyway. It was a very small number, but not to the point where they couldn't recover, as long as human beings started allowing them to reproduce. So the bald eagle the population has recovered in recent years because of the effort, mostly because it's the symbol of the United States, so they wanted to protect those eagles. After critically endangered, you end up with extinct, in the wild. So there's no animals that are actually not in captivity in a zoo or on some sort of reservation in a tight area. None of them are living in their natural environment anymore, and that's extinct in the wild. And then, of course, the last category is dinosaurs. Completely extinct, never coming back again until we figure out how to, sample genes from fossils and create them like Jurassic Park. So that's a scale. I'm gonna link that National Geographic page for you, so you can just look at how they label the different categories of endangerment, of being endangered, and if you want to choose an animal that fits that category, or you want to use that vocabulary to describe the animal that you're talking about, that's fine. The animal you choose does not have to be endangered. Any animal you want, except for wolves, because I chose that as my own. I've never had, despite the fact that I've introduced the platypi, nobody's ever chosen it. So if one of you wants to be adventurous and tell me about the platypus, you'll be the first. All right, I think that pretty much explains everything. Just remember, the lecture summary doesn't go up simultaneously, partly because I want you to watch this video first and not just turn it on and go take a shower and take a nap and then wake up and then read the summary. I want you to watch this video, understand it, especially because this is conversation class. So you right down here, if you turn on the subtitles, I've enabled English subtitles, so feel free. I think most of you have realized that now, but if you haven't, go ahead. That's not illegal. I put it there on purpose. There's no Korean subtitles, but put the English subtitles on. There are occasional, mistakes, which could be due to me saying the wrong word, or just my pronunciation not being good enough, or maybe it's just the program not doing its job. But from what I've seen, even when I speak fast, it's above 90% accurate. So you can follow along even when I speak quickly, or you think I say something with a weird Canadian accent that you don't quite get. You can look at the subtitles and you can pause the video. And this is conversation class, and I know you're not talking to me, but we'll come up with solutions for that too. So for now, watch this video, turn on the subtitles, and do your assignment. The lecture summary will be following this video lecture by a couple days later in the week. Okay? That's all for today. I hope everything is going well with you, and I will talk to you again next week. Take care.